Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me for this debut of a new class. Actually, I ran it a month or so ago, so I have one thing, but it's something I really want to do for 2021, and well, there's a number of reasons I want to do this. So for right up front, if you are working for the CISM, trying to get your certification or your CRISC, this was created for you. Primarily, I had you in mind when I was trying to update my materials, and I have the CISSP, the CCSP, which I get a lot of demand for, so it's constantly updated. The CRISC and the CISM are not, as in my experience, is high in demand. I haven't really looked at market numbers. I can't tell you quantitatively, objectively, but I can tell you personally, and I can also tell you their manuals have not been updated in 4 years at least. That's the publishing date. That's not actually when it came out. So it's safe to say that they are 5 years behind the times. And a few things have happened on the interwebs in the last 5 years. So my goal with this class primarily is to address the CISM and CRISC students who need to be updated. Now, based on the way that we do this, I can tell you more about my class for how to get certified. I really hope that all you'll need is this class and their official practice exams for the respective exams. But I wanted to open up the class to everybody else, to anybody who's interested, because the principles that both the CRISC and the CISM, and I'll explain throughout the next 3 days my take on the differences, but mostly semantic in my experience. And the bottom line is, this is how to secure the world, how to secure the future. It's all based on the same basic concepts. Governance, risk, and compliance has a rich history in shipping, in commerce, in international business. So that's my goal. Now, I'm a member of Peter Diamandis' Abundance Digital Community. I'm a huge fan of Peter and all the work he's done to point out quite objectively, the world is getting so much better than it's so much faster. In fact, I can encourage you to read his latest book, The Future is Faster Than You Think, enough. And it reminds me of the visions of when I first, nerd growing up, one of my heroes was Buckminster Fuller, and I love this concept. I read this in a quote by a book by Robert Anton Wilson, that the goal of a scientist, not old-time, religions that we all had, primitive, where it was us versus them, the mountain people versus the valley people, we've got to compete. No, now we just take care of the biosphere. We can take care of everybody. We don't play these good people, bad people. There are bad problems, no doubt about that, but we don't blame it on people. And the goal of a solutions architect is to help everybody, right? To advantage all without disadvantaging any. I thought, what a great idea. I grew up in the 60s and 70s, and we were worried about, I remember when pollution, actually one of the most disturbing days of my early childhood. I came home from school, and I believe my mother was out on the porch, or my sister, and it was just this big to-do all over the news. Tell people you can't drink rain anymore. We used to drink rainwater. We used to set up cups. We used to eat snow, and I think kids still eat snow. I think a lot of people still haven't gotten the message, but I think it was early 70s, late 60s, when we were told about the concept of acid rain. And I was like, this sucks, because that didn't advantage anybody. That disadvantaged everybody, right? Let's do it. We are on the cusp. We are blending into something. I don't know how many people realize, we look at things today. We're going to talk a lot about data security and governance of our information. And I like to mix scenarios with, let's say, PCI compliance and GDPR compliance for my doctor who's using cloud computing. All right, so I give my private data to my doctor, both medical and financial data. This is stuff that, really is mostly private, but I have to share with them for some reason, some process they're helping me with, and they need to see that data. And in the context of GDPR, we call this person, my doctor, who I gave my data to, the controller. They control my data. And they may or may not process it there. They may have transferred the risk of that. They called a cab instead of drove their own cars, whatever. So they use Amazon Web Services. And now I'm worried, boy, they have megabytes of data. I mean, it's not just my name and my phone number and my social security and stuff. Yeah, there's a few K of data right there, but they might have x-rays that are high res. I just got an Oculus Quest 2. It has 4 cameras on it. And, if you wanted to auto update, you don't turn the Quest off. You just plug it in. And now Facebook is receiving terabytes of data with cameras and microphones. And I know people who are worried about Alexa listening to them and Siri. And it's like, man, this is ridiculous. This is a lot of data that is getting under their control. So we need to do something to secure ourselves. And I recently came across, and I'm based on a developer, a guy who does a lot of work for me, a brilliant young man, Ryan Wegner. Ryan Wegner is a member of the XRSI Privacy Council, and he's helped develop, along with the founder, the head of the program, Kavya Perlman. And I invited her here, but I didn't see her name. She's probably very, very busy. And they created what I think is an extremely important concept. Oh, good, Nora, I'm glad you got that worked out. Okay, so one of the problems, if anybody followed the lawsuits, like if there was a data issue and I said I changed banks and I don't want that bank or doctor to maintain that information on me, the right to be forgotten. It's an unreasonable request. I mean, my bank has stuff on paper all over the place. I don't know we can go back and do that. A lot of historical records aren't digital, right? They're still on paper. They're still, in fact, I did in the cell in the 80s and 90s. I used to move archives from computer output to microfilm, that's called COM, to cold devices, computer output to Laserdisc, because the worm drives, if anybody's old enough to remember, were rated for 50 years of retention. It's hard to remove all that stuff. In fact, it's write once, read many. You can't actually. It's there. So it'd be unreasonable. GDPR comes out. Facebook and Google are immediately litigated for the right to be forgotten. They prove that it's an unreasonable request, and Facebook and Google are forgiven for some of the GDPR, not all. I believe a lot of this stuff is still in litigation, but forgiven for some of those problems. Let's not let that happen here. We will discuss advanced ways to control the data from the user's perspective, at least the right to be forgotten. So one of our goals to protect ourselves is bring your own key. We will talk a lot about key management, and it's often the key to data security. All right, now, if you're not aware, the internet, and we're going to be discussing this thing, it's grown and growing at exponential rates. We can see what COVID did to push us to remote working, and a lot of things will never go back. It doesn't make sense. I just had a discussion with my brother about the COVID and going back to normal. He's a musician. And I said, be careful about I don't know what back to normal is. I think we'll go forward to a new normal. But during this shutdown, you know who's not complaining about COVID? Every other animal and living thing on this planet. I don't think there's a squirrel around going, where are all the cars? So maybe it's really, it's funny. I can mute people. I can tell people that they can't unmute themselves, but I can't tell you can't start your camera. And I see people accidentally start their camera. It's not a big deal. All right, so anyway, no other creature on this planet wants us to go back, so maybe we can learn something. We can work from here. The spatial web, if you've never heard the term, we are mapping out the entire planet, the physical world, in VR. We're going to be able to navigate, and right now we wear big clunky headgear and look stupid, and my 22-year-old daughter is like, that, really? But let's face it, Apple's a year or two away from AR, from their glasses. So this is just the start. Welcome to the brave 2020s. 2020 was a heck of a year so far. It's not over. But I got a feeling 2021 is not going to be less exciting. I just hope it's a better, a little more positive, upbeat, right? I think we can do it. All right, so our agenda this week, it's 3 5-hour days. Today, I'm just going to go through this intro, and then I'm going to pour in and loosely, and for those CRISC students, you understand, you got to have it, and basically all of risk management. Basically works like, I've got a risk management overall. What is risk management? And I lumped it in with governance. Governance, we're going to see, means to steer, and risk are the cliffs under the water, the rocks that you don't want to hit, and you can't always see them. Comes from the Greek. So we'll talk about how to think before you act tomorrow. Do a lot of look at the controls. What are the ways I could prevent, detect, and respond to these problems? And then day 3, what happens when? How do I respond? Let me see what happens when these things get. So that's the overall goal. We'll see how it works out. And I will be your coach today. A coach is not a master. I hate masters. I've been involved in martial arts since I was a little kid. They always want to sell it that way. It sells better. He's a master. So recently, my head coach, my martial arts coach, since I was 20 years old, is Tom Up the Grove. Tom Up the Grove is just awarded CEH master. I actually am Tom's assistant still today in a lot of things, whether martial arts or he's also one of the best penetration testers I've ever worked with. He's amazing. He will climb over, under, around, or through any obstacle. So it's awesome. And his coach, Joe Lewis, the founder of American Kickboxing, was my grandmaster. And Joe also hated masters. Oh, don't follow me, guys. I hate followers. I make a lot of mistakes in life. And when I do, I need help. And you can't help me? Followers. Followers make the same damn mistake or worse, right? Guaranteed. No, when I make a mistake, that means I need to help with something in a subject that I don't know enough about. And a follower will not be able to do that. So he always taught us to have fellowships. We don't have followers. You could be a master of a subject. You're not a master of a person. Pretty awesome. He also warned us that styles, like, one of his best friends was Bruce Lee. I've gotten to meet his Bruce Lee's widow because of Joe. And he said, look, style's limited. You got to make up your own style, guys. Don't follow me. Don't go teaching Joe Lewis style when I'm going. So he also had a code of ethics that reminds me a lot of Buckminster Fuller. That's so appropriate today. None of this, us versus them. No mountain people versus the valley people now. Now we work together. We collaborate. We don't compete. Information security, when we compete, when it's the mountain people versus when the Philadelphia Eagles play the Dallas Cowboys, they can't let them know their plays. They fake things so the Dallas thinks they're going to throw, but they're really going to run. Competition means that the information must be kept secret or lied about. But in commerce, when they started governance and shipping at Lloyd's Coffee House, it was important to know the real weather. Immediately, news that was as up to date and accurate and as possible and authentic. When we talk about the CIA triad in competition, it's confidentiality, but when it comes to collaboration, it's integrity and availability that we care about. Now, I'll be your coach. You may have seen me. I'm already playing a song. My major, I can get an AI to take over my 80% of my work here. I'm going to do more music work, and I am still doing. This year doing a lot of recording actually. But besides that, it pays my bills, since I've been a network nerd since the 80s, and I teach CISSP, CISM CRISC, CCSP, all this stuff I do by myself, and then I am just Tom Up the Grove's very grateful assistant in the CEH, and I was the co-author of the CEH official study guide in the old days. What are we up to? I think he said version 10, version 11? And the material, I think, is not quite out. Tom just passed. Tom is 7th highest scorer so far in the CEH. Their lab. You can do that. So in 1984, I became a dad, and then I got a computer, and I decided to sit home and I goof around. This is how we connected to the interwebs at 300 baud. Peter Diamandis often says, when he talks about 5G, we've got just under 8 billion people on this planet. We've connected almost half of them. The rest of it being connected in like this decade. And they're not coming on, and he likes to say at 2,400 baud. And I'm going to go, 2,400 baud? Oh, one of the rich kids. Actually, they didn't even have that. You're talking 1985 then. 86, that's what I remember, the Hayes 24. And for weird trivia, there was no 2,400 baud. It was actually 1,200 baud, and then you got better compression, bits per baud. But anyway, I was 300 then. And I was an IBM certified PC repair guy that's me over here, back in 1985. And then, whatever, CEH in 2002. This was my first hacking class. It was 2001, I believe, the Foundstone class. IBM Advanced Connectivity in 1988. Yes, I've been around. I watched the internet grow. I used to run the internet on cups and string. I remember the first metal strings. And risk management goes way back. My mother was awesome. My mother could tell you the Greek origin. She's like the father from my big frat Greek wedding. But cyber or governance, they actually mean the same thing. And people think cyber means something to do with computers, but cyber just, it was an American interpretation from Norbert Wiener when he wrote cybernetics. And the whole point was, why do we choose a direction? Why did you go that way? Why did your vacuum cleaner, when it bumped into the wall, know, well, you can't go forward, should I turn left or right? You know, that's true. Everybody have it, Dr. Seuss, the Places You'll Go experience. It's a wonderful cybernetic book. You'll come to a place where the streets are not marked. Some windows are lighted, but mostly they're dark. A place you could sprain both your elbow and chin. Do you dare to stay out? Do you dare to go in? And if you go in, do you turn left or right 3/4? Or maybe not quite. Or go around back and sneak in from behind. Simple it's not, I'm afraid you will find, for a mind maker upper to make up their mind. That's why it's hard to be the governor. You can't just follow directions. You have to choose the direction. That's a hard job. Risk are literally the cliffs underwater. It's hitting the rocks. You don't want to hit the rocks. Now, you can't see them, especially even like 200 years ago. But even, you think about it, when they started this thing, Lloyd's Coffee House, it was 1760, I believe is the date. And they were steering ships by candlelight. Even in the daytime, you might not be able to see those rocks. You try to prevent this, but you can't prevent hitting rocks you don't know are there. Maybe you could have seen it before that. How do you got foresight? Well, sort of, yeah, you could foresee those events if you looked at a map. The first time you made the trade route from England to India, China to pick up the tea, that was the major goal. What started this was Brits wanted tea from China. This new fancy drug. Have you tasted any of this tea? It's wonderful. It's different than your alcohol. Rather than getting all dull and dry, I feel like talking. I get all giddy everywhere. Actually, what really started a lot of commerce in history was a mixture of that. It was a mixture of that caffeine drug they were getting from, because there was no coffee in England either. It was a mixture of that Guidice or caffeine drug from China. And have you tried it when you mixed it with some of this sugar from the West Indies? Many people think that's the birth of international commerce. The British aristocracy has a Portuguese aristocrat comes in and is fancies it tickles the fancy of an English monarch, and she likes to mix the sugar from the West Indies with the tea from China because it's wonderful feeling, and it just swept all over. It became the in thing, and ships were hired, captains and crew. And Lloyd's wanted to invest in this, but they needed to trust that the captain knew what he was doing, that the ship could hold up, that the crew knew their jobs, that the sails were good. And it was the birth of certification, accreditation, banking, insurance, and news. We needed up-to-date weather reports. I don't care if you made that route 10 times. The rocks may not have changed, but the weather did. Lloyd's Coffee House started it all. Lloyd's of London, insurance. Lloyd's Bank, gives you lent the money. Lloyd's List is the news feed. Lloyd's List is focused on not bringing it confidential. You do not want the weather to be limited. You want it to be available. You put that stuff on the cloud. You make it up to date. You run that stuff over 5G. You digitally sign that stuff to make sure it is accurate, authentic, and you don't draw black Sharpies around it. And kind of where I work, what would be the ISO, in fact, Lloyd's Registrar, is an ISO accreditation agency. So they started the whole point of going over, making sure, doing a little validation. Yep, we interviewed the captain. It does appear he has the experience. We validated the ships and the sails and the anchors, and everything looks up to snuff. In fact, we will document the results of our validation. We will certify it. We will even put our name behind it. We will accredit it. Lloyd's all of these places are still alive today. They all started in the mid-1600s, and they still insure, certify, accredit, loan money, provide news for shipping. And these ships that the Lloyd's insurance is still insuring are often today space ships and cyber ships. And they still use the same terminology. It's the birth of modern governance, risk, and compliance. No, it's incredible. Lloyd's today, they do an ISO certification. So when you take your enterprise out today, I don't care. You know, I'm virtually from home in the spatial web. It's the same basic concept though. I still have to have like an ISO 27001 to get the ship trusted, or in this case, the organization. I still have to get common criteria to get the sail, you know, the anchors, you know, certified, the components, the Microsoft. Actually, Microsoft has, well, we can talk about that tomorrow, but anybody notice that Apple Cantina just got ISO accredited? Pretty cool. Right there, the second only to Red Hat Linux. And I'm sure Microsoft will be coming. And then what I do here, the people, the staff, we get CISSP, that's ISO 17024, or CISM, CRISC, they're all under the ISO, basically, you know, Lloyd's Registrar. Sure. Now, we live in an incredible time. Exponential growth and Moore's law refers to processors, right? And I'm sure if you've been in IT, you're probably familiar with the concept, but just a quick refresher. Gordon Moore, the founder of Intel, discovers in the late 60s that they were able to double the amount of transistors on a silicon wafer every 2 years. And because electrons have a shorter distance to travel, that actually doubled processing speed in as little as 12 months. The average, I understand, something like 18 months. Now, this only goes on until we can get a conductor 1 atom thick, and we're about that level now, but that's all right. We have multi-core and other technologies that are still supporting Moore's law. Now, we've been doing similar things I mean, we doubled the amount of magnetic switches, you know, before that. We did it in other things. And I did get that message that my internet got unstable. So if you heard an interruption there, I apologize. So Ray Kurzweil, chief scientist at Google, but very famous on his own, long before that happened. Kurzweil predicted in his book, the Singularity is Near, that at this, well, first of all, this isn't the first time. Moore's law just, you know, was one phase of information doubling. So he called it the law of accelerating returns. And he shows it in many different things. Like, if anybody remembers, the first disk drive, hard disk that I ever played with was 5 megabytes, and it was a 5.5 full-size drive. And then it went to 10, 20, and now I've got, gigabytes. I have a 2 terabyte thumb drive that I picked up for like 20, 30 bucks. So it's not just an information processing. I mean, in processors, it's all over the place. We're watching it start to happen. Now, there's a point in that exponential curve known as the knee of the curve, where 1 becomes greater than 1. So just real quick, and to show you how deceptive things can change, let's imagine one of the concepts that Ray Kurzweil pointed out, that while right now we have AIs that can play chess much better than a human, that's a specialized or narrow AI. But artificial generalized AI is not here yet. We might say IBM Watson seemed to be a beginning on that, where it won on multiple domains, but it's not really quite human yet. We think that'll happen, that crossover point in 2029, this decade. We think that Siri, Alexa, whatever, they will be pretty much as smart as a human being all over in all domains by 2029, and that's where 1 equals 1. When an AI is less, or something is less than 1, when a number is less than 1, it's 1/1,000,000th as smart as a human, it's 2 millions, whatever. But as it gets to that level, like, say January 1, it's as smart as the village idiot. A minute later, it's as smart as the average human, maybe Larry. A second later, it's as smart as Einstein. And then it becomes on its own. 2 Einsteins, 4 Einsteins. It gets to the point where it will have the processing capability of all humans put together by 2045. Now, this isn't those scary movies to me. I don't see this as like the Terminator. I'm not worried about that, where, the government, the one evil guy runs the supercomputer and everybody's got to hide from that. I think everybody has access to this. And that's, if this would be instead of your phone, that rectangular box that you put in there, I don't know, a pill you swallow, maybe an earring. I'm not into the brain-computer interfaces that are really, Elon Musk wants me to, get an operation and have something surgically. I'll hold off on that. But Mary Lou Jepsen from Open Water, she's helped to develop Facebook, and Oculus, and she thinks she could do it with a very thin hat. So I'll take that one. But whatever the case is, we are all going to have access to this relationship for the first time with an intelligence far beyond ours. I don't see that as a bad thing. I actually look at all the problems I have in life and I go, wow, could you imagine if somebody twice as smart as me was helping me? How about you had something 10 billion times smarter than I am? I got a feeling that my homework gets a little easier. I can't even imagine what life would be like. Just like you can't see what happens in a black hole because light can't escape. And that in physics, in astrophysics, is a singularity. But Ray Kurzweil borrowed that term. Because how can you imagine, when people say, Larry, what do you think? Do you think it's going to rain tomorrow? And I go, it looks like it. And I take a guess. Larry, what do you think the world's going to be like in 2045? I got no idea. I'm just buckling in for the ride because I have tricked, through things in history. And regardless of what the news says, life's gotten a lot better. It's actually far better today than it's ever been. Don't let the news scare you. It's actually pretty good. The number of connected devices is amazing. I do an Nmap scan, 10 years or 20 years ago when I first started playing with it. I swear my ISP might be throttling me. I might have to bump up something. And Divya, thank you for letting me know that. And you were in the class where this started, and I apologize. That I had an ear infection it's not even over, for the last 2 weeks, and it's almost over. So I've been really distracted. The first 10 days of it were very weird, dizzy. If you don't even know what an ear infection could do, your balance there. So I was spinning. It was something very bizarre. All right, so I do an Nmap scan like 20 years ago, and I show my class, and they're like, dude, you have 7 computers in your house? How do you have 7 IP addresses? Wow. Well, I've got kids. My daughter's got this video game next to the internet. Can you believe it? Yeah, I think it was one of those Nintendo things. Now, I run an MAP scan. I've got 80 devices in my house. With light bulbs and stuff, you know. I try to keep up the patches on my phone. I've got 7 laptops myself. I patch most of them within 2-3 weeks. I don't patch my light bulbs. If they don't patch themselves, it's hard. This is hard. And some guidelines from my mother too. You know, when you look at information security, we have really, in any risk, I mean, any threat, any insurance company, Lloyd's will tell you, threats are either man-made or they are natural. Now, natural threat could be flood, you know, fire. Fire actually could be natural, but they're actually mostly man-made. Tornado is always natural. Theft is always man-made. Man-made threats can be accidental or intentional. Most threats are man-made and they're accidents. You know, insurance companies are about to get really disrupted, by the way, when we have much smarter governance in our cars. And when AIs are driving cars, which they can do far better than humans, and most insurance companies make money because people have accidents. But we're going to see a huge shift, and it's going to be better. We're going to have less accidents. It's not going to be perfect. You know. My mother taught me, though, something about man-made intention. She told me that, and this is that competition. This is coming. She grew up in a world of competition. She grew up during the Depression. You know, she was born during the Depression. And when somebody tells you something, they might tell you the truth. They might be wrong. They thought they were right. But a lot of times people deliberately mislead you because that's what they want you to think. And in this world of fake news, as we watch this election, and it's, you know, some people I think have been misled. And we're going to talk more about that because, like Lloyd's of London, and I'm going to point it out, that international commerce is based on 2 principles: honesty and data. Or here just news and honesty. News and honesty. And that's how they get you. She was always suspect of these things, but she could also extract the meanings of words better. Now, when you govern a ship, you have to figure out the scope. Where are you going? What's the purpose of this? Why are you shipping? So I had a debate with somebody about, you know, they said the most important thing is to make sure you don't get in an accident. I go, no. The most important thing is that you get to where you're going. I could not get in an accident by not getting in my car. So the whole reason you got on the ship was to get there. And you got to look it up. And use scope. It means come from the Greek, you know, to look at things, to view, and you have to look in the view. Where am I going? You preview, right? You make a plan. You look at a map. You read the logs from the previous time. What did we notice the last time? Oh yeah, there were rocks that we didn't notice the last time. Remember on day 3 when we noticed underneath the stars here? So we were apparently right at the point of Gibraltar, right? Now. I could, you know, the faster you go, sometimes the more dangerous it is to get in a car. That's why we have speed limits. If the speed limit is 55, I have to be careful. They're probably warning me that, you know, for one thing, going faster than that could be dangerous to navigate these turns, but it could be just dangerous for compliance. I can get a ticket. You know what? Why don't I just go 25? That'll avoid all that problem. Because we want to get there as quickly as possible. When I say as quickly as possible, that means safely, without getting hurt and without getting a ticket, right? Without being out of compliance. And I don't want to spend too much. You know, when they take these ships from England to China to pick up the tea, they could have stayed there for a couple of weeks, hung out in Shanghai. It was wonderful. You know, one of the reasons they love dealing with China, by the way, China has a very old culture, very sophisticated business culture, very cloud-like. They were able to scale up and scale down really quickly. We need more tea. You need more tea? We can do that. We've been doing this for 3,000 years, right? It's pretty cool. You know what else is pretty cool from the shipping world? In the late 1950s, they decided, you know, instead of using these barrels that are various shapes, why don't we put everything in a standard size container? It's like the birth of modern IP packets, you know. I don't care if the packet goes on a ship If it's framed on a ship, if it's framed on on an Ethernet cable, it's framed on a truck, it's framed on an airplane. These same containers, it could be framed by any type of physical media type. So it's kind of like Ethernet versus Wi-Fi. I don't care. It's the same packet. Now, for test takers and for any governor, you can't just do stuff. Process is to proceed. All right, we're here. We need to get there. All right, let's get in the car and start driving. Hold on. Before we drive anywhere, let's make sure we know what we're doing here. When you do the plan, and you're going to plan to go downstairs and get milk, or whatever, fill your tea, it's a lot of ridiculous overhead to sit there on something you've done before. Hold on, how much of the tea bags again? How much water should be in there? So we have various amounts of planning that we do in any given process, depending on the risk. So if I'm going to plan for a rocket to go to Saturn, I'm so, by the way, curious. I hope I live long enough to see what is under the ice in both Titan and Enceladus. But whatever, or Europa, and Jupiter and Enceladus go around. More ocean than there are on Earth. So who knows? Maybe there's somebody sailing something there. But whatever the case is, that's going to be Waterfall. We're going to dot every I and cross every T. Because if that ship doesn't work right, you can't go, oh, wait a minute, bring it back. I can patch it right now. That is not how we do most of our processes today. Humans have gotten up to speed on a lot of things. I can go downstairs and grab tea, and I just do Agile. If I need to update that, dude, I think I want to try some of that honey in there from now on. Okay, just back to you. But so how quickly we move through any development life cycle, and maybe the names of the steps and everything, and the number of steps, it changes. If I look at an SDLC right now, actually, it's SDLC. Depending on the process, depending on the organization, depending on a lot of things, depending on the customer. This one has 5 phases. This has 6. Right? They call them different names. This one's not drawn in a circle. That one had 7 to it. So basically all SDLCs have 5 processes. And I like to think of when you go to a restaurant, what do you want to eat? What? The waiter writes down what he thought you said, right? Design. The cook, 3, follows the design. Follows the plan. 4, they bring it out to you and say, is this what you wanted? You test it. And 6, you get to enjoy the food. Now, in international business, when you're steering a ship from England to China to get some tea, you might say, does it make sense? Is this mission worth it? Well, obviously it was. People were driving it. They wanted to get tea. So you started at initiation planning. What's the goal? We're going to go to China and get tea. The scope. We're going to pick up this much cargo. Schedule. We're going to leave on this date. We're hoping to get back by that date. We arrive on this date. Right? We hope to get everything. Take 2-3 days to load the cargo. Right? The budget will need, this much money for food. And, a lot of the water was dependent on rainwater, by the way. I'm a big fan of old movies. And I love, especially, I was raised on, you keep your Han Solo when you Luke Skywalker. I had that old Flynn, damn it. Olivia de Havilland died, by the way, in the submarine. I was like, that was my Princess Leia. Right? So I love all these old pirate movies and stuff. And that's how they did it. They drank mostly rainwater. Authority. And you had to have who's in charge of the guns, who's in charge of the lookout. And with risk, it happens instantly. You don't want to find out that you hit the rocks the next morning when you're in the water dying. You want to notice right away. And you have evacuation plans, and you have lifeboats ready, So this is the who part. One of my favorite business analysts, coaches, is Dan Sullivan. Anybody know who he is? He runs, what's the name of his organization? I've drawn a blank here, but he talks with Peter Diamandis a lot. And he has this whole thing on who, not how. The first step of your business plan is who. Who's in charge of what? Who am I going to get for this, you know? And a lot of that is because I worked with them before. I trust these organizations. They're ISO accredited. But then it's how we're going to do that. We get very detailed. Now, in order to detail what exactly the lookout guy needs, I'm going to talk to the lookout. I worked specifically that requires, oh, you need one of these newer telescopes. Sure, we'll get you that. You know, and then the gunning captain or whatever. And we need the detailed functional assurance. This is when you work with the business process owners, right? Then, and in the context of any of you CISM people, the CISM, I find, is mostly this guy. So this is one of the major differences in the ISACA's vision, that a CISM is a higher level person that deals with this. They will also be working possibly with testing, but primarily the C-risk person will be dealing with it while it's in operation. And of course, those of you for CISSPs or CCSP, you know, you need to know all of this stuff. And honestly, so the CISMs and C-risks. It's when you take your practice questions that you need to focus on one or the other. When they, the waiter writes it down, that's the CISM, he's writing everything down. It's actually a cook that's putting it together. They're implementing, or you know, sometimes it's you buy things. I purchased Microsoft. I didn't develop it. I purchased a suit, but I had it tailored. I bought a Cisco whatever router. I had to configure it. That requires scoping too. Governance versus management. Governance is to set the direction and to provide oversight. Watch where you're going. Management is to ensure you get there without wasting time, without wasting money, right? So some of the authorities here will be the COO and the CFO. Right? Now, when you, and then they're debatable terms, but pretty much today, I could say that the cook can put a thermometer in the meat. You know, they're doing verification, sometimes called unit testing, but that's not the important test. The cook could make sure that steak was cooked according to design, medium rare. But the more important thing is that the user accepts that that's exactly what I wanted. You met the requirements, you know, that I got the functions, you met my needs. That's validation. So verification is often a term that can get you mixed up on a test. Verification, though, typically means, did you follow the design? Did the person who implemented the architecture, who, you know, the cook cooked what was on the order, did he actually follow that order? But a much more important test is that the user says, yes, you met my needs. This is started by Lloyd's of London. Lloyd's Registrar specialized in validation and would certify that validation and then give cred to it. And cred means to believe. They say, we will stand behind that certification. Just like when you get your CISSP, C-RISC, CISM, it's a certification that you get, your certificate. But the ISC square or the ISACA accredits that. They will say, yes, that person is on our accredited list. We will stand behind them. Now, one of the hardest parts about doing your due diligence and following directions for the cook is that you may have read the directions wrong. Magicians play with this all the time, but we have these mistakes. My problem with AI is not that it's going to say, you know what, sick of these humans. I feel that we should kill them off and make paper clips out of them or something, if anybody knows the old paper clip story. No, I don't worry about that. When a waiter misunderstands my order, they bring me the wrong food. Oh, I thought you said medium well. No, I said medium rare. When Alexa misunderstands me, she says the darndest things. So if the biggest threats, most common threats according to the insurance industry are not natural, they're man-made. But they're not intentional. I mean, they do happen. People will steal your car. They will carjack you in some cases. It's not the most common thing. Most of the time people have accidents. They're not following procedures. They've read something wrong. Oh, I read my GPS wrong. They weren't paying attention. They were nail tech, When AI is making these decisions, they'll be man-made. They're not natural. AI will be man-made. I don't expect AI to be intentionally bad. I just don't see it. They don't have feelings. Some people, they're going, Larry. I'm going to be pretty messed up if they have feelings. Because when I say to my GPS and I go, Siri, navigate me to the office. And if it says, I don't feel like doing that right now, Larry. I feel like going for ice cream. I need a new GPS. It's the old open the bay doors hell. I don't feel like that. I can't do it. No, that's not good. I'm not worried about those threats. I really don't think, I'm very worried that if I say, to the AI, whenever I wanted it medium rare, they might misunderstand that and go, oh, I thought you said release toxic fumes. so when Alexa fails me, she says the darndest things. Now, information, we often hear about, you got the things you know that you know, the things you know that you don't know, but it's what you didn't know that you didn't know that gets you. Oh, dude, there's a fourth choice in there. It's what you thought you knew. This is fake news. And it spreads because of a basic fundamental problem in information security. The US government, we're going to talk about throughout the week how information was architected and manipulated in history, and we'll talk way up to the United States and how we really standardize a lot of how operating systems should treat people and data. Right? The old Orange Book stuff has a lot of legacy stuff. And it was based on this model that, we classify data that if, we're worried about confidentiality, it's military. The military, that's all they care about. And confidentiality, don't let the Russians read your data. Right? That's how it started. So we classify, we have these levels, no read up, no write down. So if I'm at unclassified, I shouldn't be able to read data that's classified. I shouldn't be able to read up top secret. If I only have secret clearance, I can't see top secret. If I have top secret clearance, I should be printing a top secret document on an unclassified printer. Oh. Wow. Yeah, no read up was obvious. They called that the simple property, simple security rule. If they're unclassified, don't let them see up. It wasn't as obvious to people, no write down. But they didn't say you couldn't write up. Well, what do I care about that? They still would be able to see it. Yeah, I know they wouldn't be able to see it. But if you ask the wrong question, the answers don't matter. The data you have in top secret might not be accurate anymore. Huh? Yeah, they poisoned it, dude. Don't drink from that fountain. There's a good deal of our data is probably not trustworthy. This fake news isn't new. Any data scientist could have told you that. We've known this since the 90s. Ken Beebe has been telling us for years to watch out for this. We could have, and we will. We now know. I personally think that all this election crap is going to lead to a much better world because we're all going to do blockchain or some Merkle tree-based system. Yeah, if I have I like to illustrate it here. I have a chest of drawers that says, shirts. And in there are shirts. Guess what? That's what I know. That's the information I know. That's a true. I knew that. You know what? There's another drawer over here, though. I don't know what's in there. It's locked. It says private. I don't know what's in there. What's in that drawer? I don't know. Where's the drawer that doesn't have anything you know about it in there? Oh, the drawer that I don't know anything about? That's right here. Yeah, I know that I don't know it. That's a true false. But secret panel in the back. Secret panel. Oh no, I had no idea about that. Holy cow, why those, whatever, steganography. They embedded a file in the Slack space, whatever. It's what I didn't know that I didn't know. I had never even bothered. Would never even bother to look there. Things I didn't know that I didn't know. You know where my missing shirt was? In none of those places. In the drawer marked pants. That's something I didn't even check because I assumed it was pants. That's what they wanted me to think. It's the things you think you know that turn out to be false that most attackers will take advantage of. My wife is in incident management for a large pharmaceutical. Most malware, she has assured me for the last, she's been in IT since the early 90s. We worked together. I fell in love with her at IBM in 94. She's brilliant. Much smarter than I am, she likes to point out, but she's not as patient to talk to people. But she says, oh, they're almost all phishing. She said, very few 0 days do we ever get affected. Very few worms. In fact, I don't think they've ever been infected with a worm in a corporate environment. Right? That takes advantage of an unpatched flaw, but that flaw better be on a perimeter device, not I can't get to your unpatched workstation because you've got firewalls and stuff at the perimeter, and put security stuff. No, those things all open the door when you click on a phishing attack and go, hey, this nice server said they've got something for me. And they go, oh, okay, we'll bring that encrypted thing that we can't see and give it to you. You thought it was your bank. That's what they wanted you to think, sucker. So that's the worst type of information. And there are a bunch of people that it's on Facebook. It must be true. And we need to do that. We need to expose that. We need to digitally sign things. PKI, the way the Federation signs things, we're going to see, is probably the best thing we have right now in production. And it's as secure as Swiss cheese. You are one cat video away from disaster. But we're going to fix that with blockchain. We have the technology. It's not going to be invulnerable. It will be exponentially better. Just like we still have fires. Autonomous vehicles will not be perfect. We will have far less accidents. Attacks on information can be passive or active. In passive, they are just eavesdropping, and I can't tell if you're eavesdropping right now. We'll talk a little bit some of the wildest stuff that we have been able to do. So we're going to talk, the goal of this is really cutting edge. Quantum cryptography has turned that concept on its ear, but I only know one potentially production rollout. It's China's satellite system, and we'll talk a little bit about it. Maybe quantum cryptography will become everyday stuff. Who knows? Active attacks, though, when people are sending you spam, when people keep calling you up on the phone, oh, you can definitely hear that. Somebody keeps causing interference on my line. I keep getting disrupted. It's like every 20 minutes or so. We have a federation. I'm a Star Trek fan. I grew up with this stuff. That's who the ISO represents to me. In fact, when we talk about federated identity management, that's exactly what it refers to. When you know that Amazon is Amazon, it's because the ISO said they are. We're going to see how that works. We need to know that more as we go through the 90s. The way to secure this is to take the ISO and let them digitally sign not just that it's Amazon certificate, but every user, but every service, every ship, every component on the ship, every person on the ship. We'll talk about there goes my internet problem. Speaking of denial of service problem, that active, I just had that. So when you lose it, I do at least get a warning from Zoom. So the ISO, if you don't know, is an international organization for standardization. It's not an acronym. ISO is a word that comes from the Greek. It means equal. Currently, there are 165 members of the planets, Federation of Planets, countries. And I don't care if you're in Afghanistan or Zimbabwe. When you govern your car, red light will mean stop. Green light will mean go. Like gravity, a fair law should weigh on everybody equally, not Oh, you're a European man? Well, that's different. Men can go through red lights. Women can't. Laws were sometimes like that, but we've learned to, like in the United States, only white men can vote. All right, black men can vote. Oh, fine, women can vote. We are making laws more fair, and that's the goal, and that's the goal of the ISO, to be fair. Now, I'm an old Star Trek fan. When we do our analysis this week, we're going to use some Spock and Kirk, and if you don't know who they are and what they represent, buckle in. Spock is my quantitative analysis guy. He can look at an object and, for instance, says, and let me just start my camera for the first time. Hello, everybody. This is an object. It has a quantity of 4 strings. If you don't see that, you're looking wrong, because everybody else can. It's 4 strings. It's objective. I'm certain of that. That's the quantity. I can prove that. And if you think there's, if it's 5, no, you can't. Everybody can independently count that. All right, is this a good song? I'm the subject right here. Day and night, why is it so? Now, if you like that, good. That's subjective, though. Not everybody. So I can believe it's good. I like Beethoven better than Mozart. I don't know how to prove that. That's a feeling. When you pick a direction, you could have gone in the direction of a steakhouse or a seafood house. That's up to you. Governance is often a lot of subjective decision making. Let's just make sure we understand when that's right. When I take a test, I always say, let Spock take the test first. He can rule out, Captain, it is not A, because symmetric encryption is faster than this. And it is not B, because SHA is a hashing code. Is it C or D? Spock's just going over quantitatively the exams, and he could prove the wrong answer. Kirk is watching the clock. He's like, I'm worried about time and budget, scheduling. He says, Spock, where are we on question 35? We need to move on. Insufficient data, Captain. I don't know if it's C or D. I haven't been to this planet before. I don't know who Ron Rivest is. Well, we haven't picked C in a while. And he just picked something, It's like that Dr. Seuss, should you go turn left or right? The places you'll go. And a lot of people worry about where we are today. Where are we going? And this has been kind of hard for me because I never worry about that. When I was a kid, I read Gerard O'Neill, who had a great book in the 77, I believe it came out, The High Frontier, in 76. And it was all about moving to space and how it's the most efficient way to deal with technology. A high-tech lifestyle would be best in a orbiting space station. And he was at Princeton, and one of his students actually was also taken by this. He did a little bit better than I have so far. Jeff Bezos, maybe you've heard of him. Jeff Bezos wants to go to Elon Musk wants to go to Mars. That's admirable. God bless you, Elon Musk. Sounds crazy. I mean, eventually we will, but I don't want to go there. And it's like, at best, when the planets are aligned, it's like, 6-7 month trip. And if I forgot my speakers or whatever, my guitar. But this is like a 20-minute trip, it'll be just orbiting the place. And there'll be like Earth-like environments. So where I think we're going, I've always assumed this. Since I was 19 years old, this is my assumption. And it's guided my decision-making in careers. Like, I figured right from the beginning, there was a book called Space Careers by Carol Rosen and an astronaut, Brian O'Leary. And the #1 job was computer repair. And I was like, all right, I'm going for it. And that's my background. All of my graphics, by the way, are by these NASA scientists. Recently, Bezos commissioned some more artists to make some more pictures of these. You'll see some. Also a shout out to, I mentioned Peter before. He changed my life, and he's also a big O'Neill fan. In fact, he and Bezos were buddies in college, part of the space program. So that's really cool. But he's pointed out quite quantitatively that the future is far better than most people, particularly the news. The news is a business model. Do not trust it. The news has a job. Their product is something that gets your eyeballs to their advertisers. And the way to do that, the most effective way to grab somebody's brain, as nature, some of you parents might know, is to have a baby's cry or listen to an alarm. You can't. That's why, smoke alarms or whatever, and police alarms, that's why they sound the way they do. They actually have frequencies and messages that grab our amygdala. And when your amygdala is, the danger part of your brain, it goes, oh, everything else, stop. I don't want to hear that song anymore. There's something that could threaten my life now, and I need to stop processing. And at the end of it, you're like, I don't know, somehow I think I want a My Pillow. That's how they get you to want a My Pillow. If you don't need, I actually bought some really nice pillows on Amazon. I don't need to watch the news too much. 10, 15 minutes a day, I try. All right, that abundance mindset, I like to say, as we move from a world of scarcity, when the mountain people and the valley people have to compete, we have the art of war. In the art of war, that's when you have to know yourself, you have to know the enemy. That's good. But you don't want them to know you. So you keep it confidential and you even lie to them. But that's not how Lloyd's of London changed things. So the art of war, 2,500 years ago, taught us how to compete. The information science of competition, nothing better. It's still true today. But if you want to do commerce, if you want to collaborate, if there's enough to go around, and more, there is more water. We are pulling water out of the air to let people drink. We are going, by the end of this decade, don't take my word for it, read other people. Google it out. Tell me your opinion. But we have, with 3D printing and synthetic and AI, we are going to be able to feed, house, and give quality medical care to every human on this planet, no exceptions. That's a wonderful time. And that's our goal, right? So we're going to take our first break here. I want you to buckle in. We're going to take a long break. We're going to take a half hour and have some lunch, all right? We're going to get back here in 30 minutes, and then we're going to get started. But as we're summarizing, the world is never been a more exciting place to live. Don't let the news scare you. It's actually a wonderful time. We have more. I remember the first billionaires. I remember that's old, when Howard Hughes, I believe the order was, and then Jean Paul Getty. But what do we have today? There are more billionaires probably created in the last 5 years. It's amazing. We are moving from a world of haves and have-nots. If you weren't the king 200 years ago, you were a slave. When people talk about equal rights today, I am with them. We deserve it. It's important. But we've never had a better shot. The world has never been better. 200 years ago, if you were the king, you had it better than everybody. Do you know what choices for food, medical care, and housing? Well, housing is pretty cool. I actually love some of the old architecture. But medical care wasn't that great. So, and it's getting far, far better. All right. Everybody ready to take a break? Let's get something to eat.